And happy Halloween. No, I'm just kidding. This is the uh, what are we? This is the King's Report News Hour for the 29th day of the leap sixth month in the 16th year of Changi. This is Tim Elder sitting in for the second King of Changi, Hung Jing-mun. And I'm in a different location today. Tomorrow, of course, there is a Holy Day celebration, and I'm going to participate in that. And so I'm in sort of a base camp type location here right now where I can go to the King's location early tomorrow morning. And I can either turn on the lights behind me, which make my face black, which is not good for many reasons, or I can have this light in front of me, which lights up my face, but then everything behind me is black. So I've chosen the latter. Uh, I hope we can enjoy this for just one day. And I'm afraid the internet connection is poor, um, and so I may go offline. If that happens, I've asked the tech team to run an ad while I get back on, and we'll see. We'll see what happens. If you know push comes to shove, I'm going to go ahead and use my cell phone, and so we'll see what happens. But I think we can get through it, and just this one day, because then the next King's Report after today is Monday, and by Monday evening, I plan to be in another location which I've been to before, and that internet has worked quite well. And so I think it's just this one day that we need to do this crazy thing. All right, so not Halloween, but okay. Let's look at going on around the kingdom right now in Chungkyung, Tennessee. 67 degrees and mostly clear, high of 80 today, intervals of clouds and sunshine with a thunderstorm in spots, humid. Tonight, 66 for a low, a thunderstorm in spots this evening, otherwise clear, partly cloudy and humid. At father's hometown, Cheongju in North Pyongan province in Korea, right now, 82 and cloudy. Tonight, getting down to 75 periods of rain and a thunderstorm this evening, very warm and very humid. Low clouds, 75 for a low. Tomorrow, 85 for a high, a shower in places in the morning, otherwise mostly cloudy and very humid. At the Cheonryung Palace, starting out the day, 50 degrees and fog, and getting up to 82 today. Areas of fog this morning, otherwise sunny much of the time and warmer. And tonight, getting it up to 56, clear. At the Cheonryung Palace, no, no, I'm sorry, not Cheonryung Palace. We did that at the Liberty Rock RV Park and Campground in Limestone County, Texas. Currently 70 degrees, mostly clear. 92 for a high today. Times of clouds and sun with a thunderstorm in spots. Humid. And tonight, clear and humid. Low of 69. At the Suncheon Palace in Korea, it is currently 83 degrees, mostly clear. Tonight, 73, clear and uncomfortably humid. And then tomorrow, mostly sunny, very hot and humid. Caution advised. High of 96 tomorrow at the Suncheon Palace in Korea. At the Cheonryung, or at the, well, not, I keep going back to Cheonryung, don't I? At the palaces in Gunma, Japan, currently 90 degrees and partly cloudy. And tonight, getting down to 77, a shower in spots this evening, otherwise cloudy, warm, very, yes, humid. Okay. Tomorrow, very hot with sun through high clouds, caution advised, and a high of 98 tomorrow. Okay. And then at Ilan, uh, in Taiwan, currently 89, I think. Is that right? Let's check. 88. Okay, went down one. 88 degrees and clear. Getting a warning on my internet. Am I still good? I think I am. 78 for a low tonight. Tomorrow hot with sunshine and a few clouds. Caution advised. If outside for extended periods, high of 96. Okay. Now today, I think I'm still good, right? Looks like I'm still good. All right. Um, okay, today, I'm afraid I'll have to skip the word. I know some of you, many of you are really looking forward to that, and I apologize, but just today. I'll be back with that again on Monday, but the Word of God. Meanwhile, let's look at what's going on in the world, and uh, not a whole lot to report on with regards to Ukraine. They've discovered a new nuclear site in North Korea that could threaten the U.S. homeland. That could develop into something very serious, and we'll get to that later. Let's start out though with this UFO crash in Poland. I was always interested in UFO crashes or UFOs in general. Uh, that's because he felt that if people focus on UFOs, this will help them understand more or become more curious about the spirit world. His explanation of UFOs was that these were at least the worst that I am aware of. I think he referred to UFOs more than once, but the one that I'm aware of is where he said that well, there are people in the very lower realms of spirit world, and they know very little about spirit world, and they know so little that they think that in order to get around in spirit world, you have to have some sort of craft, and so they, create these craft in spirit world and then fly around in them. And apparently, in spirit world, you can do that. Basically, what I've read about spirit world from Father's words and so forth is that you kind of get to create your own reality. In other words, if you want to have a banquet, if you want to have a banquet with 1,000 people, then you just say, okay, this is what I want here, and this is what I want to have served, and stuff like that, and boom, it appears. But that is if you have a very high level of spirit, a very high level spirit. In other words, you are close to God. So you can create your own reality, but the reality that you create corresponds to the level of your spiritual growth. That seems to be that a way that it works. And so, yeah, if people in low level spirit world think that they need a craft in order to get around, like we do in the physical world, like today I came here in an airplane, all right? And in spirit world, I don't need an airplane. But people who are ignorant about spirit world, who are in spirit world, but they're ignorant about spirit world, they think they need an airplane or they need some sort of a flying saucer or something like that. And so that's how they get around or something like that. Now, I don't know if I dare share this, but this is a story. I'm not going to try and share it. I'm going to go ahead and just read it for you. UFO crashes and explodes in a Polish cornfield, sparking fears. Okay. An unidentified flying object crashed and exploded in a cornfield in eastern Poland early Wednesday. Eastern Poland, well, that seems to be close to the Russian border, isn't it? Local authorities reported receiving calls about the crash around 2 a.m., discovering charred metal and plastic debris near the village of Ossany. Well, okay, it's good to know that. Well, maybe it's bad to know that plastic is still a thing, even in the UFO people. The explosion from the UFO resulted in broken windows in nearby homes, but no injuries were reported. Local news reported. Poland's Armed Forces Operational Command announced on social media that overnight there were no recorded violations of Polish airspace by neighboring Ukraine or Belarus. Initially, officials suggested the explosion could have been caused by an old engine part with a propeller. It comes just days after NASA spotted a hostile object heading toward Earth at 135,000 miles per hour and predicted the exact date of its arrival. Well, maybe we should look at that. Well, wait a second. Maybe that's more important. Anyway, the Polish defense minister later indicated the object was likely a drone adding that an investigation was underway to determine if it was military or smuggling related. Uh, uh, and the prosecutor general or the district prosecutor informed reporters that several investigators, both civilian and military, were examining the crash site. Well, let's take a look at this hostile object. How do they know it's hostile? Have they communicated with it? I don't know. Okay, let's see what this is. Okay. Uh, Scientists are on high alert as an unidentified object has been detected speeding to Earth. The nature of the object remains a mystery, but one expert suggests extraterritorial. Okay, and I don't know why. Now, skepticism from other scientists who argue the object is likely just a comet. Okay. But let's see here. Arrive on Earth between November 21st and December 5, 2025. And it's zooming towards the inner solar system at a staggering speed of 135,000 miles per hour. Anyway, so what is that? November 21st and December 5. All right, so we can mark that on our calendars. Okay. All right, let's see. So back to Earth, back to Earth. Okay. And cleared of that $500 million fine that Letitia James, the wow, I don't know how to describe her anyway, but anyway, so she's the prosecutor in New York, and she has tried to make President Trump come up with $500 million on a case that is really from the beginning. I think a lot of people came forward and said this is really nuts. That's really crazy, and apparently the appeals court at least agreed on the fraud or I'm sorry on the penalty phase, saying that this was excessive. And, and so here, President Trump wasted no time and pulled no punches in denouncing the fake case against him, fake in quotations, as the quote $500 million unquote civil penalty was overturned Thursday by the New York Appeals Court, hailing the courage of the court for throwing out the unlawful and disgraceful ruling. All those adjectives in quotes. Total victory in the fake New York State Attorney General Letitia James case, Trump wrote in the post on Truth Social on Thursday. But she's going to appeal this. Of course, she's right now being prosecuted in her own right for fraud. And so she really is on the verge of being completely discredited, and probably her career as not only as a prosecutor but as a lawyer is probably coming to a screeching halt pretty soon. And so she's grasping at straws, and so she's going to, of course, appeal this so as to keep the final conclusion of the case from occurring as for as long as possible. But this was a foregone conclusion. Even Democrats realized that this was a really big overreach on her part. Um, and here, President Trump continues here on Truth Social. I greatly respect the fact that the court had the courage to throw out this unlawful and disgraceful decision that was hurting business all throughout New York State. Others were afraid to do business there because she was basically guilty of doing something that everybody else is doing. So everybody was saying, "Wait a second, um, does this mean that we're going to get hit the same way?" And the New York governor says, "No, no, no, don't worry. We're only going after Trump." Which is not how the U.S. justice system is supposed to work, right? Something about equal justice under the law. Um, and, and Trump added the claim that the figure actually was over $550 million. Well, yeah, because it was also now interest, I think. And so it's more than that. Sought and failed to keep him from the White House before the 2024 presidential election. So the intention there was to bankrupt President Trump, and this was one of the ways in which they wanted to prevent him from gaining the White House, regaining the White House. And of course, they failed, and now they're paying the consequences for that failure. As they say, if you're going to go after the king, you better aim straight, because the consequences are pretty severe, and that's what they are suffering right now. The amount, including interest and penalties, was over $550 million, Trump added. It was a political witch hunt and a business sense the likes of which no one has ever seen before. All right, so Judge Arthur Engoron, a frequent target of Trump's ire, was not in the Post either. Every single dollar was street. Arthur Engoron. Trump continued. Okay. I wasn't given a jury, and during the course of the trial, which lasted a long time, was not given one ruling in my favor by this political hack. But worse than him, if that's possible, was Letitia James, a corrupt and incompetent attorney general who only brought this case in order to hurt me politically. She is a Trump deranged lunatic, and so on. So, yeah, he deserves to have this moment of a victory from this case. I'm sure that, even though it was obvious that it was going to be overturned at some point, I'm sure it is a pretty big weight off of his shoulder, and he, I think, deserves this victory lap. So praise God for that. Okay. All right, let's see here. Um, let's see here. Let's do the North Korea thing now. North Korean nuclear threat to U.S. homeland identified. This is identified by the CSIS, Center for Strategic and International Studies, which is a global organization in Washington, D.C., a think tank there. It's leans towards the Democrats quite a bit, I believe. But they've come up with this. And I guess we could sort of speculate on their motives for announcing this now, trying to make things difficult between the U.S. and North Korea, perhaps. Is this something that the U.S. really has not known about until now? Or is it something that they have known about, CSIS has known about, but they're just deciding to tell us now so as to turn our hearts against North Korea? I don't know. Maybe it is something that was just discovered by the United States, perhaps. If it is, then it's a pretty serious situation. Let me go through this with you. A previously unidentified North Korean missile base that can host long-range systems, including those capable of striking the continental United States, has been identified, according to a new report. Newsweek has contacted the North Korean embassy in Beijing and the Pentagon for comment via email. So this is a Newsweek article. So CSIS is leftist, Newsweek is leftist. So you have to wonder, why are they doing this now? Despite the United Nations sanctions, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's regime has continued to test increasingly sophisticated intermediate range and intercontinental ballistic missiles, including systems it says can deliver nuclear warheads. The program has heightened tensions with South Korea and has driven the U.S. and increasingly Japan to deepen security cooperation. Pyongyang cites those moves as provocations to justify advancing its missile and nuclear programs. I'm not really sure how much the South Koreans are worried about this. The leftists in South Korea are pretty naive about North Korea. They say, oh, I'm sure Kim Jong-un would never use nuclear weapons against his own ethnic group. We're the same blood after all. But they don't read their own history. They don't read the history of the North Korean Workers' Party. It's actually when North Korea took hold of South Korea for a brief time during the Korean War, the South Korean communists got purged. They got killed by the North Koreans. Okay, and this is consistent with the Marxist ideology or Marxist and Leninist ideology. You eliminate anyone who could possibly be a a rival or a threat to your authority. I briefly touched on this former North Korean soldier or spy who is in South Korean jail right now, who says he wants to return to North Korea. And he actually went. I guess he's not in jail. I guess he's out. I guess he's been released into South Korean society. And he actually went to the North Korean border, or the as far as civilians are allowed to go to the border. They're not Civilians are not actually allowed to go all the way to the border, but to the uh, southern border of the demilitarized zone, and asked to be let through. He asked the UN command or the South Korean military to let him through. So I want to go to North Korea. Please let me through. Uh, and he was refused. And yeah, but anyway, if they had let him through, he probably would have been arrested in North Korea because North Korea doesn't want him. They don't want him. And this is not the first time that he's tried this. He's this the current leftist administration in South Korea is not the first leftist. There have been at least a couple of three other leftist administrations in the past, and he's tried to work with them to go to North Korea, and North Korea has consistently refused to have him come back. They don't want him. It's an extra mouth to feed, right? I mean, let the South Koreans feed him. He's very naive about his relationship with North Korea, and other leftists or communists in South Korea are also very naive about what would happen to them if North Korea were to somehow gain control over South Korea today. They would all be purged. They don't realize this, and I think it is very possible that North Korea could use a nuclear weapon against South Korea, depending on the situation. We'll see. Right now, they're not going to because they know that if they attack South Korea, basically the United States is going to wipe them off the map. Certainly, President Trump, that is the case. But let's say if a sort of let's say Joe Biden 2.0 were to come into power in America, let's say in the future, Joe Biden 2.0, and let's say that um, North Korea at some point, maybe Kim Jong Un just gets up one morning on the wrong side of the bed or something. It's possible that North Korea could attack South Korea if he felt that he could get away with it. North Korea is always pushing the envelope to see what they can get away with, see what they can get away with, see what they can get away with. And if it comes to the point in the future where that's the next step, it is possible that North Korea could attack the South with a nuclear weapon, but let's hope it doesn't happen. Uh, but to say that the North Korea's nuclear program has heightened the tensions with South Korea, I think is not true. Tensions with South Korea currently and North Korea are actually not that bad, are not really heightened at all. I would say. I think South Koreans in general are very naive about North Korea. Yeah, live and let live. They're not going to bother us. We're not going to bother them. This kind of thing. And has driven the U.S. and increasingly Japan to deepen security cooperation. And this is true. This is true. So the U.S. and Japan are much less naive about the threat from North Korea. Pyongyang cites those moves as provocations to justify advancing its missiles and nuclear programs. Right. So yes, that's true too. It does cites these security cooperation in the war games or the joint training exercises that goes on. They do use those as excuses to advance their missile and nuclear programs. That's true, and to justify it to their people who they are starving to death in order to have money for their nuclear program. Let's continue here. The Hardin base, which has not been publicly acknowledged by North Korea, is in a valley near the village of Shinpungdong in North. Here it says Pyongyang province, but I think that's actually a mistake for Pyongan province, about 17 miles from the Chinese border. The site would expand a next network of 15 to 20 undeclared ballistic missile bases and related support, maintenance, and missile and warhead storage facilities, according to an analysis of open source satellite imagery published on Wednesday by the Center for Strategic and International Studies, a think tank in Washington, D.C. So a leftist think tank. Construction is believed to have begun around 2004, with major work largely completed and the base believed to be operational by 2014. So this is why I suspect that this is not news to some people in Washington, okay, at the CIA or at the Pentagon or at the NSA, that Newsweek is just finding out about this. And so the CSIS may be just finding out about it. I doubt that too, though. But for some reason, they're deciding to make this public now. And I just have to wonder about their motivations for doing that. Key features including barracks and underground facility and two hardened drive-through missile checkout bays where launchers can undergo maintenance, systems checks, and arming. The reinforced shelters, concealed under tree and brush cover, measure about 115 to 57 feet, large enough to accommodate all known transporter, erector, launcher types, and multi-vehicle mobile erector launcher systems for rapid deployment. During times of crisis or war, these launchers and missiles will exit the base, meet special warhead storage transportation units, and conduct launch operations from dispersed, pre-surveyed sites, the report said. Okay. And then CSIS assessed the garrison as a brigade-sized unit. It cited open source information reporting on Korean People's Army organizations involved in the ballistic missile program and past interviews with North Korean defectors. That would imply 3 missile firing battalions and 6 to 9 nuclear capable ICBMs, such as the Hwasong 15 or Hwasong 18. The site does not appear to have the fixed air defense positions commonly found at missile bases. However, it lies within 9 miles of a surface-to-air missile site and 4 air defense military batteries, and the resident unit likely fields light anti-aircraft guns and shoulder-fired anti-air defense missiles, CSI has said. Okay. All right, so that's just one more sentence. CSI has said satellite images showed ongoing development at the site. Right, so we'll have to see how President Trump decides to, or the Pentagon decides to respond to this at some point. I doubt that they're going to publicly respond immediately, but we'll see what happens with this. Okay. So maybe this is the U.S. just wanting to let North Korea know, hey, we know what you're doing, we see what you're doing, and you're not fooling us. And if things go from bad to worse or something like that, then that's one of the places that we're going to target this kind of thing. Right? Maybe that's what's going on here. Okay? It's hard to tell. It's hard to tell. All right, let's see. We do have something on Ukraine here, where President Trump did say something that's newsworthy. He's speaking to. I wasn't going to share things with today. Was okay. Trump to Newsmax, and this is on Newsmax. Ukraine, Russia, peace, clarity in 2 weeks. And this is what he says here is interesting to me. He said President Donald Trump told Newsmax on Thursday that he'll know within 2 weeks whether a peace treaty can be reached between Ukraine and Russia to end a 3.5-year-old war. Trump made the comments in a phone interview with the Todd Starnes show, an interview that also aired on Greg Kelly Reports on Newsmax, et cetera. And then, well, I'll let you know about it. I would say within 2 weeks, we're going to know one way or the other. After that, we'll have to maybe take a different tack. But we'll see. We'll know pretty soon, Trump said, without elaborating on the significance of the timeline. So different tack. This is one thing that I find consistent with President Trump. Is he'll go in one direction, and then if it's not working, then at some point, and pretty quickly actually, he'll say, okay, not working, let's go this way, or let's go that way. And that's kind of a sailboat imagery, right? You're going one way, and so no, we're not getting good wind here, let's go over here, let's go this part of the ocean, let's go that part of the ocean to get some better wind, something like that. So, and that's what President Trump does. And this sort of drives some people crazy, European leaders and Democrats in the U.S., for example, because they can't catch him. When they think they have him, he's going in a different place. But he's very flexible, very agile, and that is both a shortcoming and a strength. But I think it's working mostly as a strength right now because it's hard to pin him down. People say, "Oh, look, he's failed." Well, I'm sorry, he was failed, but now he's doing something different. So we'll see what happens with this in a couple of weeks. Different tact. Um, I suppose that's. I suppose that would be sanctions, and hopefully, that would mean tariffs against China for its support of Russia. I keep waiting for President Trump to really come down hard on China in terms of the tariffs, and he's not doing it right now. And I would like to see him do that much more strongly, far more strongly than what he's been doing. Okay. I keep getting these messages saying that my internet connection is not stable, but um, I'm going to keep going right until unless the tech team tells me otherwise. Okay. Are we okay? I guess we're okay so far. Are we okay, tech team? Okay, great. All right. Well, keep going then. All right. So that okay, and then um, we have this interesting story that White House now says that it's reviewing all 55 million people with U.S. visas for potential deportable violations. So, yes, I knew the pendulum was going to swing back the other way, but yeah, okay, I guess this is really swinging pretty far, isn't it? And as I've said before, this is not how I would do it, but it is understandable because Biden and Obama before him really attempted to change the demographic makeup of the United States by essentially opening up the U.S. border, especially on the south. And now President Trump is, and also people who support this among Americans are saying, okay, America's been very generous, and until now, for the past many decades, since World War II especially, we've been very generous, and we've let people stay here illegally, even though we knew they were illegal, but we let them stay here out of our generosity. But that generosity has been abused, and so now we're going to reestablish the rule of law. So that seems to be the logic that is going on here. And now, so here, the State Department said Thursday that it's reviewing the records of more than 55 million foreigners who hold valid U.S. visas. So well, we're not just talking about the people who came over during the Biden administration anymore, right? We're talking about anybody who is in the United States or who holds U.S. visas, and some people are not even in the United States. They're outside the U.S. and they plan to come back at some point, but they still have valid visas for returning to the U.S. So those people included more than 55 million, they say, who hold U.S. visas for potential revocation or deportable violations of immigration rules. In a written answer to a question posed by the Associated Press, the department said that all U.S. visa holders are subject to continuous vetting with an eye toward any indication that they could be ineligible for the document. Should such information be found, the visa will be revoked, and if the visa holder is in the United States, he or she would then be subject to deportation. The department said it was looking for indicators of ineligibility, including visa overstays, criminal activity, threats to public safety, engaging in any form of terrorist activity, or providing support to a terrorist organization, which would include, participation in a pro-Hamas demonstration, for example, or even probably something like pro BLM or pro. Who else did we have? Antifa, right? We haven't heard from Antifa in a while. I'm wondering what they're doing. Anyway, pro Antifa or something like that. We review all available information as part of our vetting, including law enforcement or immigration records for any other information that comes to light after visa issuance indicating a potential ineligibility, the department said. Hey, so a lot of people have self-deported, and I think this kind of messaging is being put out to encourage more people to self-deport if they think that they might be targeted by this kind of a thing in the future. So we'll see how this goes, but this is going to continue at least, I think, until the midterms. And I guess the Trump administration will probably take a look at this next year as they are approaching the midterms to see how the U.S. Uh, voters are responding to this. And if the U.S. voters are positive, then they'll continue it for another 2 years. But if they see that this is actually dragging on their popularity, then I think we'll see that they will stop doing this. But anyway, it's going to continue for at least for several months and perhaps for a year from now, I think. It says China just launched a payment system in Africa to replace the US dollar, exclamation point. I think this is a video, so I'm not going to show it, but um, I think there are two things going on here. One is, of course, China trying to find some way to challenge the United States, but also the leftist media trying to promote anything that China does, because China and the U.S. leftist media are teaming up to try and bring President Trump down. But it's not really working, is it? Not really working. You can ask Letitia James about that. Okay. Oh boy, yes. And President Trump said that he was going to go on a kind of a secret patrol of DC last night. I don't know if he actually did that, but of course he's telling the media before he goes, so that's not very secret. I think I think President Trump has a little bit backwards. He's supposed to do the thing first, then you announce, "Oh, you know what? Last night I went on patrol," but he's doing the opposite. I love him. uh, oh my goodness, yes. But yeah, apparently the crackdown on crime in Washington D.C. is going very well. Um, and here we have an Epic Times story. DC business owners weigh in on Trump's crime crackdown. Here we go. Let's see. Across the nation's capital, business owners, employees offered mixed opinions of President Trump's push to clamp down on crime in the city. Trump's August 11 order to temporarily take over the city's police department has prompted a surge of law enforcement agents in the city, leading to more than 460 arrests. The president also deployed 800 DC National Guard troops who will be joined by guardsmen from 6 other states. The Epic Times took to the streets of Washington to ask business owners if the federal effort has had an impact. Some noticed a change, while others were skeptical that it had made any difference. Some also voiced concern over increased immigration enforcement in the city, yet they acknowledged that this crime was an enduring challenge, including offenses perpetrated by juveniles and young adults who face more lenient sentencing under recent changes to local laws. Some of the entrepreneurs who spoke to the Epoch Times all asked to be identified by initials or by alias. Others did not wish to share their last name. Many locals worry about retribution from both criminals and politicians. That's Washington, yes. Youth crime. Terry has lived and worked in Southeast DC for decades. When she first started selling food in the Navy Yard area, it was filled with low income housing. Crime was common. About 15 years ago, the area experienced an upswing. The rundown housing projects were torn down and replaced with row houses, some valued at more than $1 million. New shops opened. Navy Yard felt pretty safe, at least for a while. Like much of Washington, the neighborhood fell prey to a post-pandemic crime spike. On August 19th, Terry told the Epic Times that the perpetrators were often very young teenagers who would steal cars, take them for a joyride, and then leave them to be recovered by their rightful owners. She made it clear that she is no fan of Trump, but said his takeover of the police department has made the neighborhood safer. Quote, "It does feel quieter," Terry said. "It does feel safer to walk around. I don't know if it's because people are paying attention to the news and then they're realizing, well, now it's not a good time to be going around," unquote. She said the problem is that young criminals expect soft punishments. DC law does not allow youth under 15 to be tried as adults. Kids 15 and older may face adult prosecution for more serious offenses like sexual assault or murder. Washington's Youth Rehabilitation Act of 2018 also allows for lighter sentencing of offenders younger than 25. Some officials, such as U.S. Attorney Jeanine Pirro, want to overturn that law, along with one that allows judges to shorten sentences for those convicted as juveniles if they have served at least 15 years, and another that allows some juvenile criminal records to be expunged. Terry said she hopes the city tightens its laws so youth criminals, your young criminals, or their parents face stricter accountability. She said after school programs could also help the kids make better use of their free time. The local recounted disturbing incidents involving very young Washingtonians. 11-year-olds have decided to get tougher, to get together, and they will break into the pools in our neighborhood in these high-rise buildings, and they'll steal alcohol from the store, and they'll just leave all sorts of trash, she said. Terry described this as an ongoing problem. One thing that shocked her was learning that it happens in broad daylight with no concern for secrecy. So here, uh, recently actually, I think this happened just yesterday, where the president of South Korea was, the new leftist president was saying, "Oh, suicide in South Korea is a problem." Okay, yes, that's widely known. South Korea has one of the highest suicide rates in the world. And so he says, "Okay, we're going to establish a government um, a government agency to deal with this problem." uh, and here also, you see this lady here. She says that that the government needs to do something about this problem of youth crime in Washington D.C. The government has to do something about it, and they keep missing They keep missing the core point, which I'm sure all of you know it by now. Let's say it together: family, family, family. Okay, it's family. People in South Korea don't commit suicide because of a lack of government agencies. I can assure you of that. And people commit suicide for various reasons, but the lack of government agencies is not one of them. But of course, the leftist president here is simply repeating a favorite talking point of all leftists, including Hillary Clinton or Barack Obama or European leaders or whatever, Macron or whoever, Keir Starmer, which is that you have a problem, government can deal with it. Government government's responsibility is to deal with any and all problems in society. That is what government exists for, right? Remember Obama's wife's one line that she said, "Oh, we have nothing to fear from government because the government is us. We are the government," which is, of course, again one of the leftist talking points. So here again, and I love President Trump. I think he's doing great. But if he wants to really solve the problem, of course, okay, yeah, increase police presence, that's good. But at the same time, you have to get to, I'm not Putin, but you have to get to root causes, which is, I'm sorry, one of Putin's favorite phrases. But you have to get to root causes. And the root cause of crime, of youth crime, is family. Family. So, what can the government do about family? Not create more government institutions, but to stop doing things that undermine the family. And in general, the size of government is related to how strong the family is. So, the bigger the government, the weaker the family. The smaller the government, the stronger the family. In the past, when the government was small families were strong because people had to rely on each other. When things got tough, they had to rely on family. But today, when things get tough, well, we rely on the government, right? Every week we have, or every 2 weeks, I guess, that I think it just came out yesterday. First time unemployment, first time applicants of unemployment insurance, right? Things get tough, you get unemployed, you go to the unemployment office, right? And of course, the unemployment insurance is something that I think companies pay into, and also we pay into in our salaries, but it's a government program. But in the past, before those kinds of things existed, we relied on families, on our family. And so we developed strong ties in our family so that if and when things got tough in the future, we knew that we had our own safety net going for us. I've mentioned before that here in Korea, I'm a member of a family, my wife's family, that it's actually like that. Unfortunately, they are not. You know, they don't understand True Father. They don't follow True Father, unfortunately. But they have this kind of close knit relationship where they uh, rely on each other when things get difficult, and uh, family members who are doing well at a particular time will help those who are not doing well if the help is needed. And one good thing about being in Korea is that my wife is able to develop sort of the relationship further with her siblings, and to kind of to repay not just in monetary means, but in other sort of psychological means, all the support that they have given us over the years, and they have done a lot for us, and we have done a lot for them as well. Unfortunately, that kind of thing is rare, even in Korea, and uh, and even rarer outside of Korea, especially in the United States. I think China may still have something like that going, at least in part. But it's important to develop those relationships, those sort of horizontal relationships within the family, so that when things get tough, you can rely on those relationships and not rely on the government. And it involves, family members helping each other to do well. But President Trump is not uh, going in that direction, and that's one thing that I wish that he would do. We need to pray for him that he can understand the importance of family, and he understands the importance of family, and he has a good family. His sons and his daughters are, for the most part, doing well, and they seem to be a pretty close knit group of people. But he's not reflecting that in U.S. policy. Is my concern. Let's see here, and let's look at another one. Let's see here, fear of ICE and crime. On August 19th in Northwest Washington, Yanni had to unlock the door to her cell phone store to let the Epoch Times inside. She said the police takeover hadn't made much of a mark near her store in Petworth. She said law enforcement was more prevalent on 14th and 16th Street in neighboring Columbia Heights. For Yanni and others in Northwest Washington who spoke to the Epoch Times, immigration and custom enforcement activities are the bigger story. The area includes many people from El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, and Mexico. Some are illegal immigrants. Everyone's nervous, Yanni said. The same day, protesters outside a nearby train station chanted ICE go home at law enforcement, who had set up a checkpoint. Okay. Let's see here. And a hairdresser spoke to the Epoch Times in Washington's Brooklyn area, located in the northeastern corner of the city. I've been there, yeah. She acknowledged that the area wasn't always safe, but for her, it's no different from any other large metropolitan area. All right. I was there during the Washington Monument campaign. Okay, so Epic Times doing some good reporting there on the streets. Okay, let's see here. More than 300 arrested in Washington. All right. And here now, Senator Sanders, Bernie Sanders, backs Trump administration plan for a stake in Intel. Bernie Sanders, of course, he's a communist. Of course, he wants the state to take over the means of production, even a little bit. That's his ideology. I don't know why Trump is doing it. Senator Bernie Sanders offered support for the Trump administration's plan to take an equity stake in chip maker Intel. The stake would be in exchange for the previous administration's award to Intel of almost $11 billion in grants from the Chips and Sciences Act that was passed last year and meant to support U.S. semiconductor production. Yeah, I'll bet he likes it. There was a rumor apparently that the U.S. may also take a stake in Samsung, but Samsung is denying that. All right, let's see here. HHS, Health and Human Services, Robert Kennedy Jr. rolls out MAHA in action to spotlight health reforms. Good for him, Kane. And here we have an in-depth story. Maybe we should focus more on this at a later date. Inside Taiwan's fight against Beijing's silent invasion. In fact, I think I'll mark this and we'll do it later at another day, maybe on Monday. Okay, I will do this later Monday. That looks like a good story, but in depth. All right, internet outage before major parade suggests China upgraded firewall to tighten controls. All right. Let's see. All right. And let's see here. Let's go to Newsmax to see what other stories are there. All right, let's see here. Nothing is really catching my eye here. Well, let's call it a day for today. I don't want to. I'm not too happy about sort of being in the dark as it says here. Okay. Yeah, let's call it a day for today, and then tomorrow, of course, no King's Report because we have the Holy Day, and then Sunday. I'm not sure what's happening Sunday, and then on Monday anyway. I do know that on Monday, the regular time, I will be here. So, me in the meantime, God bless, Godspeed. May His kingdom come quickly.